Hey, Josh,
Hi there, how's the sound?
you sound fantastic.
Fantastic.
We have got you. We're discussing the TheraI sinus cap thing that I love so much and recommend all the time.
20 minutes, Tina?
Yes.
20
Yes.
minutes for presentation or just presentation
We would like to,
discussion?
we would like to keep it to 20 minutes. Because I mean, look how many policies we got going here. It's a big number. Mm. Good evening. It's 5:30 and we're opening the special meeting for the budget hearing. And this is for the public hearing for the 23-24 school district budget. But we don't have anyone signed up to speak. You wanna?
I know it's being recorded and it's
Yeah.
on YouTube, so we can go through what
Okay.
the document went through last
Sure.
week and. Okay, so this is essentially very similar, if not exactly the same, to what we saw last week. The things that are on this presentation is the obstacles from 22-23, the plan for 23-24, a 1-year fund balance overview, a 4-year fund balance plan, 23-24 enrollment, 4-year enrollment projection, the 23-24 revenue expenditures, the change in apportionment comparison between 23-24 and 22-23, a 4-year revenue expenditure forecast, risks that we see. Obviously, we probably came nowhere close to identifying all the risks out there, but these are the risks we can see, and some processes to help monitor and keep us and the school district accountable to achieving the fund balance goal. So for the 22-23 school year, we are not going to make our 5% fund balance. We're actually going to go backwards a little bit. We had a dramatic increase in student needs. Probably going to continue forward. So that's a lot of this is talking about how to mitigate that unfunded cost of these student needs. So we had a 16% increase in sped count. We started the year at 18.5%. We ended the year at 21.7%. As a reminder, this year, the 22-23 school year, the cap for what we can receive funding for is 13.5%. Going forward into next year, that cap moves to 15%. There were several bills in the legislature to try and remove the cap completely, or to try and over a 4-year period remove the cap. None of those passed. I think they identified it as to fully remove the cap, it would be about a $1 billion hit to the state's general fund for all school districts. And they had different priorities this year. And so for the 2-year budget that they did this year, there is really just the increase to the 15%. And the agencies that are lobbying on behalf of school districts, WASA, WASPO, they're all going to come back next year, and their top priority is going to be to try and get full funding for special ed, because it's costing districts and taxpayers a ton of money locally. And part of the main purpose of McCleary was to try and lessen the burden on the local taxpayer to handle these kinds of things. So as the increase in sped enrollment increased our costs, especially at the PK to grade 2 level, and resulted in a large increase of paraeducators, and especially one-on-ones. We had some legal issues this year, resulting in some admin leave and some legal fees. We had, for the past 2 years, driver shortages. This year, the result was, it got better, but the result was that nearly every non-to and from school for the Bell bus transportation was done by charter buses. So all the sports, band trips, those kind of things were charter buses, and that cost us about $150,000. We've got difficulty in hiring some specialty positions. We're not alone in this, but it really hurts the consistency of services that we have. And we have, it's very difficult if we see kind of when 85 to 90% of your costs are in labor, and you see something kind of going astray a little bit halfway through the year, it's really hard to reallocate resources because you're tied up in legally binding contracts with a lot of your staff. So the plan for the 23-24 school year is we want to build a budget that is still conservative and very obtainable and can get us to our 7% fund balance in 23-24. And then also kind of plan in a 2-year cycle here to get to 10% in 24-25. The 10% is a kind of a result of that WASA program review that said that a district our size, with the spending patterns that we have, with the sped population we have, all these things, we really need a 10% fund balance in order to not go negative certain months of the year. And I think we all agree with that. We see that, right now, if I review the board report, which I don't have a board report this month, we'd be negative $1 million and waiting to dig out of it. And we will dig out of it, but it's still not pleasant for anybody to see, and it's really a risky situation. So we want to utilize attrition to reallocate certificated staff more efficiently, and we've already executed that. That's about $1 million savings in the plan for next year. We did that by trying to get our K-3 class size closer to 17-1. It was 16-1. It's funded at 17-1. Really trying to get our class sizes to a level that's more in alignment with the way the state funds us. We have some of the smallest class sizes in Snohomish County in our district. We're still going to have some of the smallest class sizes in Snohomish County, but they're going to be closer to what the state funds us for. And we have a really small bubble of kids, of 5th graders that are moving up to be 6th graders that are going to be at the middle school for 3 years. So we want to make sure we're not overstaffed at the middle school for those 3 years. We want to reallocate those teachers to a school that is growing rather than a school that is shrinking for 3 years. We also want to utilize attrition and the resolution we did last week to reduce some non-certificated positions and save some money. We had attrition for a cabinet level position. We had attrition for a behaviorist, and we did a reduction of 1 supervisor. We are looking to, we have a resolution that allows us to right size up to, I believe it was 11 paraeducators. We're having some attrition there too, so we're not sure what the full impact of that is. If we can avoid too much stress on employees and do it through attrition, that would be ideal. And then we want to closely monitor extra time district-wide, and we think a very conservative amount to save is $200,000. And the result is a $2 million to $2.3 million reduction in our budget in our expenses for next year. So this budget grows our fund balance by about $3 million. Our enrollment is still conservative, although the kindergarten enrollment is growing very slowly this year. We're trying to get some more word out about, hey, get your kids enrolled. We have 121 kindergartners enrolled, I think 5 pending, so 126. We think that number is going to be closer to 160. We do have some open teaching positions that we always hold this time of year in case kindergarten doesn't come in. So we are staffed we have a budget for expenditures according to the enrollment that we projected, but we hold open a couple of positions just in case that enrollment doesn't come in, and we can just not hire a couple of staff members and make up for that loss in funding if we don't have 160 kindergartners come. So this will result in a 9% ending fund balance, and we do have in there a contingency in both revenues and offsetting and expenditures of $1.5 million, so that if we do get more enrollment or more funding for something, we want to spend it, we don't have to go to OSPI and ask for a budget extension. The 1.5 million is a typical number for a district our size. We do about that much every year. This is a 4-year plan. We're really trying to get to that 10% by the second year. So as you can see, we get to 9% the first year, 11.6 the second year. And we feel that with the unknowns out there, we need to go beyond the goal in case there's some unknowns that materialize, because there always is. And then we kind of flatten out in the back half of the 4-year projection. This is the enrollment projection for this year. Again, really, we just felt like we put a kind of a conservative kindergarten class, rolled everybody forward a grade, and kept things flat. So the result is an increase of about 50 FTE, all due to a really small 12th grade class graduating last year and a normal sized kindergarten class coming in. And as I mentioned, that we did increase special ed a little bit, and we did budget our expenditures based on what staffing units are generated by this enrollment forecast. 4-year enrollment forecast, also conservative, really just kind of trickled up. When we were having growth in our district of new houses being built in town, our kindergarten classes were coming in about 180. That growth has kind of slowed down, so we backed off that estimate to about 155 this year, and the only really not rolling forward the previous grade level, the only thing we really increased was the kindergarten class a little bit every year because we think there's going to be some more growth there eventually, but it's very conservative projection, and those projections kind of drove our revenue and our expenditures in the 4-year plan. So total revenue on the top for this 23-24 budget, total expenditures on the bottom. We removed $500,000 in federal stimulus because this was our last year to be able to use that. We increased our general fund levy from 4.75 million to 5 million because of the way the calendar works. This is the first year we are able to collect the whole $5 million. We put in $1 million for safety net. We budgeted $1 million last year. This year we're going to get 1.3 million, but $1 million is a nice conservative number. Everything else, all the other grants are flat, and they look like they're going to be flat. And the expenditures are based on the staffing needed for our enrollment projections. Our expenditures include all salary increases. The one thing that we don't necessarily know is if in September or October, some teachers come back and they've maybe acquired enough credits to move right one lane. There's always some of those that we don't know about early. So there's some of that is probably out there. That's not a significant number, but there's some of that is out there. And we did see a reduction of about $900,000 in both revenue and expenditures due to a change in the pension contribution formula because I haven't heard this anywhere else, but in Washington State, pension programs the state-run pension programs are doing really well, and they have very good balances. So they reduced some of the fees that are collected from school districts to contribute to that. But it's a pass-through kind of thing, so they also took away the revenue that they give us to fund that. So it's really kind of a wash, but kind of explains why our expenditures actually dropped by more than the 2 million. It really dropped by 3.2 million because of that. This is just the comparison of apportionment. The bulk of our revenue comes from state apportionment, which is driven by the per school model and our enrollment. And so in 2023, we got almost 29 million. 2024, that's going up to 31.1. So a difference of 2.2. Transportation in 2023 is the real number. Transportation in 23-24 is an estimate, kind of keeping it flat to 22-23. We don't really know the full amount of that until January. And it's going to be more than the 1.714 because of inflation, but we won't know. So we just went conservative, like my middle name is conservative, and with the 1.7 million, so that if we get more, it just helps us. 4-year revenue expenditures, again, based on our enrollment and based on what we know about salary increases for 1 more year. We don't know anything about salary increases beyond that. We don't know anything about inflation, although a lot of the projections are that inflation has got to fix itself after about next year, but we'll see if that's true. So this is just the expenditures and the revenue that we use to get that 4-year fund balance projection. And then kind of risks and obstacles we see for next year. There is the potential for an increase in special education. We went from 18.5 to 21.7 this year. we think a lot of that was pandemic related and inability to have evaluations done in a timely manner during the pandemic, and there was some pent up demand. But we need to, as you'll see on the next slide, we have some things to help address that and hopefully ensure that we're in front of it a lot quicker. And we need to be united in our implementation of the LASA recommendations. It's a very long and detailed report that points out a lot of things that we could be doing better here. Transportation, they are in contract negotiations right now. There's going to be some salary increases in transportation. There's also going to be increases in the funding. So I would imagine that the transportation salary increases, like everything else, will outrun the additional funding we get, but we won't know that until a little bit later in by the end of the summer. And then the staffing shortage needs to be resolved in transportation, and they're actively recruiting all summer long. And I think it's going to be much better next year. We don't want to be using charter buses, as nice as it is for students. It's very expensive, and we don't want to be canceling routes at 4:30 in the morning. That's very disruptive to families. Extra time, we need to be united in limiting extra time to only where it's absolutely necessary. We need to be efficient in how we utilize existing staff at their contracted schedules. We need to find other ways of managing behaviors and student traffic and students getting around campus other than having extra paraeducators. They're just not funded by the state. We have to use other revenue sources to pay for paraeducators, and it's, as pointed out by WASA, it's not sustainable. And then seems like 22-23 was an anomaly with legal matters, but we need to monitor that, and as things come up, be on top of them. Bottom line, we have a very good plan to move the district forward and get to that 10% fund balance within 2 years, but we need to implement the plan and be united. It only takes one weak link to derail a plan, so we really need to be united. And then process monitoring. This is the same slide from last time. We are definitely going to, one of our main focuses this year is going to be monitoring extra hours. So we need to ensure that these are being pre-approved by the building principals, and that they understand that if it's a building principal need, it's going to go to their building budget. If it's something that they think the district needs to support, they need to come to us with a plan, and we need to pre-approve it, and we need to understand what the cost is and make sure we're aware of how it's going to impact the city fund balance. We're going to review these extra hour reports monthly as payroll is processed. We're going to ask principals to report on extra hours weekly at cabinet meetings so that we're ensuring that they're checking on the extra hours every week, and they're not surprised, we're not surprised, nobody's surprised. And if an employee is submitting extra hours that wasn't pre-approved, the principal doesn't have to wait a month to correct that. They can do it quickly. Monitoring building budgets monthly. They already get reports about how they're spending their building budget, but I think we need to go over them with them to make sure that they are looking at the reports and understanding how the effect of the extra hours is having on their budget. And we need to just reinforce that there's no district budget to augment building budgets. We don't budget for anything for that. So they're on their own. We can't do, there's no bailout fund. There's no hole in the back of Crossroads in the backyard there with money in it. We can't bail them out. And we need to hold them very accountable. Other school districts hold their administrators accountable to their building budgets. We need to do the same. We need to monitor IEP meetings and the IEP process. We need to ensure proper training is provided to staff prior to the start of school. We need to adhere to the new referral procedures. We need to publish the procedures in a place that is easily accessible by all staff members. And we need to have a director present at all high stakes IEP meetings, meaning if there's staffing or services that are going to be a result of an IEP meeting, we need to have a director present. And updating the revenue expenditure forecasts monthly, including year-end fund balance, using my expertise of how cash flow tends to happen, along with encumbrances and payroll reports and all of those things to really give. Last year, I think I probably updated it about quarterly, or probably quarterly, or even at the 6-month period, and then a little more regularly after the 6-month period. We'll do it monthly, starting with the first month of the school year, and just to have it out there and to talk about it monthly if need be. We want to build a graphical report, hopefully on a 1-page, that illustrates the IEP referral status and process, and where students are in the process, what the result is of the referral. Just kind of a snapshot so that it'll be a kind of a living document that everybody can see at just in a glance, what's going on with referrals. Because sometimes we don't see the result of a referral for several months, but understanding where it is in the process will help us plan better and be more transparent. And then we're open to any other suggestions, doesn't have to be now, but as the year progresses and we're starting to talk about different things that we weren't seeing at this point, we're open to changing or adding or creating new things to add to our board reports, just to be transparent and to ask, seek guidance and to make sure that we're looking at everything we need to be looking at. And that's what I got.
Thank you. Board discussion, question, Marshall? I just took a few notes because though you've said it before, we've gone through this a couple of times now. So when you talked about kindergarten registration being not where we projected to be yet.
Right.
Could we just put it on the sign coming into town? Do we own that sign?
It is on the sign.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's one of the
I don't
ways
go
we
that
started
way.
podcasting it. This week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I saw it this morning.
Good, because I don't live in town very much because I live down south. Thank you. Good. Great minds think alike. Thank you. Let's see. Is there a way that we could do something to get people to report to you ahead of time that they're degree seeking or credit seeking so that you
We
can
asked for
plan
that,
better?
but it doesn't often. There's no carrot to really wave in front of them. I mean, other than they have the contract says they have until October or something to let us know if they have any change that would impact their salary placement. They have until October.
They have September 15th, but they can provide us a transcript up till October 1st. There is a letter of intent for the following year, which they'll put in, if they're seeking jobs elsewhere, continuing again. And then at the last question is, will you be getting your master's degree or have additional credits? And that's where I get some of the idea that people are moving up, or they tell me that they are, and then that's all I get the transcript.
So they only report in once a year to you on that stuff?
But we only collect it once a year.
Only collect it.
We only address we only change their placement once a year.
Right, okay. And then let's see. Active transportation. Can we put the active transportation recruiting on that sign? Somewhere between like register for kindergarten and get a job driving a bus?
So I did talk to the new supervisor,
Uh-huh.
like students this week, and they sent me a flyer
Uh-huh.
they use that has both Granite Falls and Lake Stevens on it, just because we are a co-op. So it looks good. It doesn't look like people might not understand that our drivers are also out of Lake Stevens. So we'll have a flyer for National Night Out and for any other place in town. And then I'm gonna get banners to put on the signs or out on our fences. Another thought would be to maybe have buses on like open house night in the parking lot. And out information. Figured that would just up our visibility here because be honest, I've never seen, I don't think I've seen signs that say hiring bus drivers.
They had a sign there for a while, but
A little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can put it
I think we can put
on the board or how that
every
works.
board's owned by the school districts prior to.
Yeah, we can only have one at a time on there. And right now we've got the kindergartners.
So it can't like flash one and then the other and then the
Well,
other.
because
and then-
Fire and City have one on there right now.
Oh,
and
I
it's
see
booked
what
For
you're
the
saying.
next 3 weeks, all of us have one.
I gotcha.
So there can only be 3 max at it. So if they didn't have something, I could put it up there,
Right,
but
fire. We love those guys.
Nobody
All
has
right.
got to burn down.
No, we do care, we do care. All right, and then parent volunteers for the student traffic and behavior. I saw that as a risk and an issue that you were looking to control. So again, that's my same question as always. What can we do now so that HR doesn't get slammed with a bunch of background checks in September and we don't get them back from whoever until mid-October and we're dying the first 6 weeks of school waiting on background checks? Like what can we do now?
yeah.
Recruit.
Well, I would think we turn around the background checks as quickly as possible, so.
Well, I believe that, but I just mean, there's gotta be some parents that have some that are due, like. That could ask you in July, so they're not hitting you up in September like everybody else, right? So I'm just wondering. Then principals could plan for what we could only hope is so many parents hoping to volunteer at
Mhm.
school, right?
Yes, I mean, we can probably talk amongst ourselves about, we have the ability to put announcements out to families.
Yeah.
Like via phone call
Oh,
or,
Well, and my kids love having Melanie's,
well, it's been so nice. It's been so nice all summer. It's been-
that's right.
I don't miss Melanie's voice.
I know, my kids are like, you know Melanie Freeman from the district office? Yes, I do. She's a rock star. All right, and then let's see, last thing. Principals, the extra hours. So I'm just gonna say this because you and I talked about it ahead of time. For the accounts payable, which is whatever, so the principals authorize the expenditures for the accounts payable to get reimbursed or whatever. And we talked about the extra hours being subtracted off of their thing and giving them kind of a rolling total and possibly being able to ballpark. If they come to the cabinet meeting with how many extra hours and how much ballpark they've approved, you can give them a snapshot of what they've got left. So maybe that's a way for you to better project because you're dependent on them to tell you.
Yeah,
So somehow they need to get the information to you. So anyway, so that was just a thought. And then love your graphical dashboard idea. And yeah, those are just comments. Just love that idea. Anything else? Director Carey? All right, thank you.
all right, thanks.
We have 2 minutes left on our public hearing.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have to adjourn. Do I adjourn this at 6 and then start the other one at the same minute? All right, I didn't know if there was. Yeah. Mhm. Almost a minute. All right, the time is 6 o'clock. We'll adjourn the public hearing for the budget the special meeting for the budget hearing, and we will open our regular board meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We'd like to recognize tonight, we have Director Carey, Director Kincaid, Director Ledoux, Director Dane, and I am Director Veach. Thank you all for being here. Moving right along is our 4A, the annual organizational meeting. So this is when we discuss the board president, vice president, WIAA, community representative, and legislative representative. So discussion, I think, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'd like to maintain the WIA seat for the coming year.
Perfect. Director Kincaid.
I would like to continue to be community liaison unless someone else wants to step into that role. I'm open.
All right. Director Carey.
Yeah, I mean, since I'm on the WASDA legislative committee, I think staying the ledge rep is fine, and the rest we're kind of doubling up on that. So I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay. I would, there are two of us, I guess, that technically qualify to be the chair. And I would be okay to do it for one more year and to just keep Carl as the vice president, just because honestly, he's a good mentor and he doesn't want to be the president because it's a lot. So he's a good mentor, but it's a lot. And then,
But if I could just jump in,
Yeah.
but I'm very comfortable if one of you guys want to be the vice chair. This isn't, I don't ever want you guys to think that I'm like, ooh, power. Like, I'm very happy to stick to water the flower of anyone else who's ready to step up in that role, if that's what you guys want. But if you're comfortable with me doing it for another year, I'm certainly okay with that too.
and I think we need to discuss what Bill's gonna do, but then I had a thought, but I'm actually, so I'm interested, do you have some thoughts on what you're interested in representing or doing or?
I'm not sure what we represent or do, so I'm learning.
Oh, you know what? I think that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm gonna, without giving any advance notice, I'm gonna call out Director Kincaid for this great idea of mine. So further in the agenda, we have a new policy coming up, the 4200, I think it's the second reading. Is it 4200? Is that the one? What's the number? Is it 4010?
4200.
Yeah, 4200. Can't even believe I remember. So in there, I noticed that there's a call out for us to have community rep that also has civic engagement with the city and with the other, let me think, I had it pulled up, but there are several things in the policy.
Mhm.
And I wondered if, I think there's space for us. We have, communication is one of our big things, right? And you're doing a lot of work with the parent part of that communication. And I don't mean to, you have such a connection with the civic part of the communication just from your career that I wondered if you would be interested in representing the school board in kind of the events that are in the city that have to do with, you know, what the town is doing, what the fire department's doing, what some of those more civic type things are. Sure, Carly's kind of,
So I'll have to get information from Carly about
Yeah.
what she's doing currently, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
I mean, I'm making this up right now. So if you have like,
Head of civics.
that's right, we're gonna make you the director of civics.
There you go. I like
Civic
it.
engagement. That's right.
Civic engagement.
Yes, we're totally making this up.
Or we just create something.
So, and if I pull it up, I can see that we have that in there as a part of our new policy. And I really want to see us like stick to our own policy for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought, I wonder if and just your career and being the, working and leading a
Absolutely.
fire department. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take it on and we'll figure out what it is.
We get.
But the best thing about being at this is you get to make rather than us telling you, you get to help
Yeah.
make whatever it
It
is.
really is. It's about whatever can improve the communication, the two-way communication
Sure.
with the town. Okay.
Yep.
Do
I love it.
we make a motion on
So
that?
we have to make a ton of motions and roll call votes for all of that stuff.
Every item
This
has a
whole
roll.
line.
For the whole thing.
Okay.
Oh,
We got specifically the
there it is.
all of the pro tem, all of that stuff has to be a roll call vote.
Yep, I gotta open that, don't I? Oh, wait, where's it?
So you have to
Okay.
call for nominations
All right,
and then for president.
all right.
Yeah.
So there it is. I pulled it up this time. All right. Oh, we have to do our school assignments too. Should we do that first? Or we-
No, you should
we
start
have to-
from the top.
All right, so can I get a nomination for president?
I would like to nominate Director Beach.
Thank
And then there
you.
has to be a second.
I second.
Oh, thank you. The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Wait, do we have to roll call that one?
Yes, we do.
Oh, yeah, it does say that. I just have to tip my head up a little bit.
Mhm.
All right, we have to do this again, roll call vote. Director Dane,
I vote for
thank you. Director Ledoux,
Aye.
Director Kincaid,
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Assumption of office by the new president.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. All right, nomination for vice president.
I'll nominate Director Carey for vice president.
No second. And for the roll call, should we start with you again, Director Dane? Thank you.
Aye.
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 Aye, thank you.
I thought about voting nay for a hot second.
Would you like to assume your chair? Just kidding. All right, nominations for President Pro Tem.
So this is, I'm sure you guys know, but pro tem is in the event that we're both gone and you still a quorum, this is the person that leads the meeting. So usually it's the next person as far as like time on the board, just because usually they have a better grasp of how our meetings go. So I guess that would be Carly. Yeah. All right, not to put you on the spot. By the way, but I realized after I said that, I definitely put you on the spot. So I apologize.
No,
about that.
that's all right. I'm
Would you,
okay with it.
would you be okay to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I would like to nominate Director Kincaid as President Pro Tem.
I'll happily second.
And here we go.
Aye.
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 Hi.
Aye. We're getting more efficient. Thank you. All right, next is nomination for legislative representative.
Now, these don't have to be roll calls.
Okay,
I'd like to nominate Director Carey for the legislation representative.
I'll second.
motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Nominations for WIAA representative.
I'd like to nominate Director Ledoux.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Nominations for community liaison.
I would like to nominate literally the best person ever in this role, and that is, speaking of the person who first had this role, Director Kincaid.
All
I
right,
will second.
the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I am going to insert into there that we also nominate,
I don't know if we can do that.
can we not? So we have to
It's
do
not
it
an
at the next time.
official thing.
All right, then we'll do it on the next agenda. We'll official you next agenda. All right, will you remind us that we need to confirm Director Dane on the next agenda to the position I just made up a few minutes ago?
Civic engagement.
Technically, you need to modify 1210 to do that, but
I have to modify what?
policy 1210.
Oh, we'll put 1210 on there too. Hold on. Just for, or we can we do two people in the same role for the community liaison? Could we do
Split
that?
it up into two.
Just have two? Is there anything in the policy that says there?
I don't
Can't
have
be
the
two.
policy in front of me, but I could read it.
Hold on, let's look at it really fast. It doesn't link, does it? Shoot. Well, we can look at it at the next one.
Yeah.
and that'll be fine. So maybe we have to modify the policy to create this thing, or maybe we just do 2 community liaisons, but we'll figure it out before the next meeting. All right, next is board preference on allocation to schools. So school assignments for each board member. There are 5 of us, and coincidentally 5 schools that we represent in our district. And each year we have a school that we represent. So Mountain Way, is there somebody that would prefer Mountain Way, Monte Cristo, or maybe, I guess if you want to say a preference?
I'd like to stay.
Go ahead.
No, you spoke first, please.
I was just gonna say that when I got on the board, I kind of inherited Mountain Way. But I'm open to anything. If anybody wants Mountain Way, I'm really open to anything. So
Okay, Peter?
I'll take either one of the elementary schools if somebody has a preference for one of them. If not, then
Which school was your daughter at?
I
Oh, she's gonna, okay.
she has been at, yeah, she's been at Mountain Way. So I mean, I'm fine at either location if somebody has a desire. If not, then I'll just go to Mountain Way.
Okay,
I'm fine with staying with the middle school every year.
okay,
I've been in contact with them a couple of times over the summer, so.
perfect. All right,
And I like either the high school or Crossroads.
okay. I have a son at the middle school and a daughter at the high school, so if you're staying with the middle school, if I could have the high school, and then Bill, if you would have Crossroads, would that work? And then I think I got lost in which one you two are
I'm gonna
having.
do Mountain
I'll do
Way.
Mountain Way.
Okay,
So I can do mine.
okay, so did we know that?
Got it.
Do you mind writing that down, emailing us? Because like 3 months from now, I'm always like, what school did I get?
I'll send it.
Thank you, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. And is there a confirmation? There's not a confirmation vote on that. Perfect. So I think we did that. All right, we get to move on. So 5A board comments.
Yeah, we're up here.
So a lot's happened in the last couple of weeks, and the last meeting was a difficult meeting for all of us, and I want to acknowledge that the board made a statement that, how the direction that we had to take or have to take to correct our financial situation is a difficult one. And, I think I want to acknowledge that speaking with staff members, that they're carrying a lot of that load too. So I wanted to put that out because I don't know if we said that at that last meeting. Also, I met with Marshall today, and he gave me an excellent overview of how the district finances work. I got to go into the HR department, payroll department, and talk to our employees there, and just have a really good feel for the school district and where it's being directed at the time. So I like that. And then one last thing is I need to have some grace with the board tonight. I have to leave a little early. I have an exchange student that is at home, and I want to make sure that she doesn't stay there too long alone.
Oh,
So if I can get check out between 7:30 and 8, that would be awesome.
perfect. Thank you.
I think the message is, Carl, don't talk too much. Proceed.
Well, you can talk all night long. I can just jump on virtually if I have to, but yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the recognition.
Yeah, so a little bit of a piggyback on Director Dane, which is last week, nobody would classify that as a fun meeting to be a part of. So very difficult decisions had to be made. So there's effectively a challenge that I'm putting out to everybody in this room, everybody in the community. Controllable items. That's a bit of a trigger to me, because whenever I hear uncontrollable to me means that there's literally nothing that could have been done. And I feel like a lot of the items or processes that we face, they may be very difficult to identify up front, but there can be changes made more swiftly, and that's us being agile. I absolutely, to use one of my, ACT study words, I absolutely abhor the term uncontrollable and to force something off and to just say, oh, well, that's how it is. That's the process. So I really challenge everybody, right, whenever we see something that occurs, and I see up here when we talk about staffing, and it's really hard to forecast and everything. Well, in my eyes, if we have an open head count, that open head count should cost X amount for the year. And if we are in fact being very strict on extra hours, then there shouldn't be any surprises. There shouldn't be any uncontrollable factors behind that. And if there are any uncontrollable things, and we do bring those up and we see how can we fix those, because I do expect us to ask the really hard questions of what if insert, potential, what I feel like is often boneheaded solutions, but a lot of the time they don't feel like they're the questions that are asked, right? I've had conversations with many people across the union and then intra-district where I'll ask and the response will be, well, that's just how it is. It can't be just how it is. So controllable, right? Once again, I think we have a lot more in our control than is initially seen. On a lighter note, National Night Out next week, if I'm not mistaken, right? Next Tuesday.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll see quite a few people out there. I'm assuming we have some sort of a booth, right? Like last year. So we'll all be out there saying hi to everybody. Yeah, excited to see that and get this Titanic steering in the right direction. Titanic's a terrible choice.
I was gonna say. Did you see my shoulders go?
We'll say container ship, right? I mean, it's a big boat. It's a big boat, and we're trying to turn it in the right direction. So, my thoughts.
Thank you.
So I just kind of piggybacking on them, but in a little bit of a different direction. Speaking about the meeting last week and talking about the budget and all that stuff, during that meeting, Director Veach made some passionate statements and she really spoke from her heart. And I wanted to take a minute to apologize to you because I don't believe that I acknowledged your statements at the level that they deserved. And I just wanted to say that, it was an emotional meeting and in the heat of the moment, I either couldn't find the words or didn't have the guts, and you had the guts. And so I just wanted to thank you for that and thank you for speaking your mind and for your passion. And for saying what was on my mind that I couldn't get out. So I appreciate that. And then just on a lighter note, we're approaching August. Things are revving up for the new year. Teachers are starting to get excited. Kids are, well, probably not getting excited, but I hope they are ready for the new year. So I just wanted to, say to parents to keep working with your students. Now is a great time, if you haven't been this summer, to really get in and go over some things they learned last year so that when they walk into the door in September, that they're prepared and ready to go. And not just academically either, but working on their routines, skills that they need to be successful with their peers and with their teachers. So.
A lot of thoughts, and I promise not to use the term piggyback. In my so I get ready for a football analogy. I'm sorry, but here it comes. So I played a lot of football in my time. I coached a lot of football in my time, and one of my favorite coaches said, "What's most important to you is what's most important to you is the thing that you talk most about." And in my communication, talking with people, staff members, real people in this community that are going to be, that have been deeply impacted by the decisions that we've made, the financial impact, but now are even more so directly impacted. I'm talking real people with names that I break bread with, that I love dearly, that are significantly negatively impacted by this. Who have said to me, man, all you guys talk about is money, and it makes me anxious, right? Like, are things that bad? Oh my goodness. And so I guess I want to just take a second to say that personally for me, while I know that I talk about finances a lot, that is not the most important thing to me. What's most important to me is our educational outcomes. How well are we leading, growing, pouring into the students of this wonderful community? And not only that, but how also are we loving and caring and supporting our staff in this community? That's what's most important to me. I talk a lot about finances because, I mean, newsflash, things aren't great. And we're working really hard to make that better. But I recognize that that is certainly, if all you know of this board is clicking into the Zoom meeting, I know how that could feel like that is the thing. And I certainly admit to that being one of the top 3 or 4 things, but certainly not the number one. And I'm going to try and strive to talk more about the things that are most important to me. Last meeting wasn't great. However, I thought long and hard about that meeting, and there's things like the upcoming change to policy 6022 that I think can do some wonders at taking us out of the how and having to talk so much about money and putting up some guardrails so that, we can kind of understand and make sure that the car stays in the lane without needing to talk about it every meeting. But also, I guess I just, in closing, want to make a personal commitment that I am passionate about this district being better tomorrow than we are today. That is the only reason that I sit here. That is the reason why, I've done this for as long as I do. There is a goal, a district that I know that is just on the horizon for us. And, sometimes people have to step up to do hard things, to do hard decisions, to collectively move the community forward. And that's always and always will be my goal. I don't do it for the Facebook likes because there's not a whole lot about them. And I don't do it for the friends because I've lost more than I've made sitting in this chair. But I just passionately feel and have always felt that there is a diamond on the mountain that we can reach if we just all collectively start to row in the right direction. So I just want to recognize, like I said, that I know that there's real world impact to people that I know and love in this district. There has been. There's been tears shed. There's been people that I desperately love that are looking for other jobs and will be soon. And that there is no joy or happiness in that for me. But I don't want to make this about me because the pain that I feel is even exponential to the people that I'm talking about. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I think I said most of my piece last week. But I will say that, I guess what I'll say is my interest in talking about finance is because we saw that we were over budget, and I appreciate that we kept an eye on that. We didn't let it drop. We kept kind of going after, what happened and what are we going to do differently, right? We have a different plan. We saw the plan that Marshall put up that will help us control the spending and make this year and next year, in future years better for the district. And I appreciate that I was heard, that each of us was heard, and that, the team went back, pulled together a plan that will put us in a better place because we need to support the students, and academic outcomes have not fallen off the radar. They absolutely, this is the year, it has to happen. So I'm there with that as well. Now, we had talked about having a special meeting based on the WASA review on possibly Monday, the 31st. However, Dr. Middleton mentioned that is right up next to National Night Out, and there's something else. What is it? There was something else. Dr. Middleton, help me out. There's 2 other
Go
things.
and shine on Saturday.
Go and shine, that's right. So would it make more sense for us to move it a week to the following Monday for a special meeting to discuss the WASA report?
Yeah, that's fine.
You would think I would know that date. I'm assuming it's like this.
August 7th.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yep.
So, okay, I just wanted to bring that up and that really is just to help us be better. So I appreciate each of you and doing the tough things and the hard things that I know that each of us carry in our hearts and on our minds. Thank you. Next is, let's see, 6A, the superintendent report presented by Dr. Middleton.
All right, thank you, everyone. There were a number of items that we did talk about last week and some things that I was going to come back and share with you this evening. And the first one that also is referenced in the WASDA report and something we talked about last week is what can we do to have uniform expectations across the school? And so just doing a little research, I've been working with Melanie on this, and that is having, excuse me, just a second while I move this, having a poster in every single classroom and a large banner in every single school that has some basic expectations. And what I love about this is it's not just the expectation for the student, but it's the expectation for the staff member as well. And here are some core values that we certainly are embedded in all of our rules and expectations, but having a common language is going to take us a long way in just setting that basic tier 1 set of expectations of respect. And so the example is, I will respect you, please respect me. And calm, I will stay calm, please stay calm too. And really what I do love about this is these are concepts that a kindergartner can embrace, yet it's not so childlike that we can't have the same conversation, only age appropriate, with a senior in high school. So I have sent this out to all the principals and shared with cabinet, and they are all on board with this. And so Melanie is working on some pricing, and we look to have this in every single room, every single school, every single library, cafeteria, gym, etc. So again, we have that common language. Again, this is just a basic level, but we can build from this. And one big difference was when we came across this, it said in your classroom and in your school, and we changed that to be possessive, that it's this is our district. These are our classrooms. This is our school. And we all own that. So just wanted to share that first of all. Second item, I've talked about having an admin handbook. These are just a sample of topics. Again, this is something Melanie and I are working on, and it's quite a bit of work. We're thinking this is going to end up being about 60 to 70 pages. But you know, when we bring in a new administrator, where they draw their information about the district comes from policy manual, student handbook, state laws, federal codes, all of that. And really, doesn't it just make sense to have a one-stop where school administrators can go to so that they can be prepared or referred to when it comes to common experiences that they might face on any given day. The next item that we talked about last week, and I believe Marshall has talked about this quite a bit, both last week and this week, are just some of the financial controls. Our admin retreat starts next Tuesday, August 1st. And I want to thank you for pushing that 31st workshop to the next week, because that is one more thing we are preparing for. So on Tuesday the 1st, we'll be talking about the expectations and protocols when it comes to any of those financial pieces, whether it's staffing or whether extra time, expenditures, etc. We will be expecting a weekly report to my office and to cabinet on extra time, and then that report will be turned around and reported to the board. Marshall made reference to a document, really a living document and regular update to, again, the superintendent and cabinet from the Director of Student Services on referrals that we're talking about. That will be a regular agenda item on our weekly cabinet meeting, and then reporting again to you monthly. And finally, that monthly update to the board on fund balance projection. The other item in the WASA report had to do with professional development, and this starts next Tuesday at our admin retreat. We'll be addressing student behaviors in the year 2023 and how that's very different from when I started teaching or any of our principals or cabinet started teaching. We have someone coming from the ESD to present, as well as provide some planning time for our building administrators. We'll also be, one of our days will be dedicated to PLCs and inclusive instruction. And again, there'll be time to take in that information, but then turn around and what does that mean? What does that look, how does that look different from last year? From our building administrators. Understanding and reviewing our student discipline, and this is a shift in mindset. Really, our discipline isn't about punitive. Discipline is about teaching and taking the time, using that as a learning opportunity and the development of a person, of a good citizen. And you know what, this is kids are kids. They're going to make mistakes, and we need to take advantage of that time. And again, not just look at discipline as a punitive event, but really a learning opportunity. We'll also be receiving legal update on laws and court rulings from our attorneys, and spending some time on what intervention and appropriate steps in the special ed referral process looks like. And then at School of Rock, two big themes similar to the admin retreat. There'll be planning time, but they'll be receiving information on addressing student behaviors in 2023 and planning time within the PLCs, and then best practices in inclusive practices, and again, providing planning time for PLCs. These are today's pictures from our new turf and track, and they are basically done. There's lining to be done on the track, but first they want the track to cure. The field is still closed and will remain closed until they come back and do that, the striping for the lanes. So that's very exciting. Another item in terms of facilities is we've been talking with Dawn and Paige about their needs. And again, we're looking at enrollment, and our elementary kindergarten isn't as robust as it has been in past years, but we are getting very close to the point of needing portables at Mountain Way and Monte Cristo. Marshall has been working with actually a couple different vendors and opportunities to make some moves. It is very expensive, and so we are shopping around to see if it's something we can do this summer, or whether our two principals can adjust their buildings and provide service to all of our students in the current setting. That's as we get more information from the vendors, this will probably be an email to the board where this might be something we need to do and act on relatively quickly. But again, we're working with principals to see really what their space needs are. And if it's not this year, it will be next year, because we will be seeing more growth in the years to come. And then finally, we've talked about a number of upcoming dates. We've already referred to National Night Out, Show and Shine, and we would love to have board participation, whether you want to sign up for a time slot or whether you want to drop in, but we would love to have you there. On the 17th, each year, Community Coalition does a handout of supplies, and I've been to a couple of those and looking forward to this next one, and that'll be at Mountain Way. We do have our August 23rd board meeting, and all of our principals will be present, along with Dr. Manns, to talk about school improvement plans for the 23-24 school year. The School of Rock is August 30th at 7:30. We always invite our board to come and at least be there to do some meet and greet with our teachers as they settle in. And if you want to stay for the opening, that would be great. I'll certainly be recognizing you if you do. And then on September 8th is our first home football game, and we're really thinking about doing a new field celebration that evening. And if you want to put that on your calendar as well. And that last item, of course, we now have a date, and that will be Monday, the 7th, August 7th, for special meeting on the management review. And when this meeting is done, I will be in contact with the panel to see if they can join us by Zoom that evening. And that's what I have for you this evening.
Thank you. Board, any discussion or questions for Dr. Middleton?
I have some, if no one else has any burning.
I have just a few, so you go ahead.
Okay, I hopefully mine will be quick. Dr. M, do you need, or are you for the admin retreat? Is there any board members that you want to have at that or participate in that in any way? Or I didn't see it on the calendar.
If any board members would like to come, especially on the 1st, when I sort of do that general welcome, that would be a great time. Or if you want to come at any time during the week, I think if we can avoid having a quorum, that would be fine. Or we can just, make arrangements, if we do. So please come. And again, we certainly will recognize you, and but if you want to be there on the 1st, that would be great. We would love to have you.
Okay. Is there any, I always say this to my manager, so please don't take it as flippant. Is there something that I can actively do, or is it more of just like a, hey, come and see it? Because if it's more of a, hey, come and see it, maybe I can make time. But if it's a, hey, Carl, there's something I want you to participate in, I could certainly make time for that if you get the distinction between the two.
We have a pretty full agenda. Okay. And so that's why I'm sort of really encouraging that first August 1st, and we're starting at 8:30 each day. But on our August 1st, I'll certainly be welcoming people, and I think any presence on that day to welcome our administrators, encourage them. It was a tough year all the way around for everybody, all staff members last year, and any sort of encouragement would be the ask.
Got it. Secondly, outside of School of Rock, do we have any, I don't know, I hate to use the term, I even cringe when I use the term team building event. But any type of collective event that we do outside of school for, our teachers and staff, or anything like that. And I just as a question, and then maybe a follow-up question, I guess, after that.
Well, we do have another professional learning day in October. And so we bring our teachers together for that. In terms of other cultural events, or just semi-social events, or even this summer, we're doing the 75 days of fitness that we are summer fit and fall strong. And we have a number of people who Melanie, do you have a number? Is that 65 of our staff who are participating in that?
It's something like that. I don't have the actual because I broke it down by building.
Right.
It's quite a bit.
And so this is just, just some of the things we do. Oftentimes we'll do something between Halloween and the first day of the new year because we have a number of holidays, and again, just trying to stay active and fit, that type of thing. And then certainly at each school they do team building and events to support each other, get to know each other.
The reason I bring it up just real quick is I had to coordinate a family night out for my workplace. We went to an Aqua Sox game and I was actually quite amazed at how relatively inexpensive it was for a large group of people. And, obviously money is tight, but I'm certainly willing to lead the fundraising effort so it's no financial impact to the district. If that was something that we were interested in, where we could buy, I don't know, 100, 200 tickets, invite everyone and their families to go see an Aqua Sox game together or something like that.
That's right. And I know you participated in that first year when we did a staff event at the Silver Tips game.
Which was
So
great. I still don't
that's,
understand hockey, but it was great.
And Melanie has done some research on even a Mariner game. But yes, we like doing those things and would welcome that as well.
All right, we could talk about that offline, but if you want me to, like I said, I'd be willing to fundraise for that and figure out a way that so it doesn't have to come out of the general fund. And then just lastly, do you have something just on the safety that you want to talk about as part of your presentation? Just keeping the.
I would say that the other item that's occurring on August 17th is, remember, we have that new app E3, which everyone's phone will be tied, and when there is an event, it's just instant messaging to everyone. On the 17th, they will be meeting with our principals to get that ready for implementation this year.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Questions are way deeper than mine. Just a couple of things. So I mentioned earlier when Marshall was speaking, for the authorized expenses, you on your slide for financial controls, it talked about bringing the total number of hours. And I think I heard you say the kind of a ballpark on those authorized expenses, but if you could consider adding that to that weekly expectation that you find out about that, so we can have a more accurate picture of the spending per building before we get too deep into the year. That's just a thought. The other was, I realized as you were talking about professional development, I heard of the PLC conference that was several of our staff members went to in Seattle sometime in the last week or two. So it made me think, for the professional development conferences that we send our staff to, I want to remember, just sort of put a pin in just a few sentences, a little report back to the board. It doesn't have to be a presentation, but just something to let us know that, hey, how was it? What did you think? Just something like that. I know it was down at the convention center in Seattle, but I don't know a ton about it. And I heard the word very expensive and portables in the same sentence. Word very expensive down. I look forward to the email. And then just for this, your upcoming dates slide, could somehow like an invite to each of us get sent on the calendar, so each of us have those all on the calendars if they're not there yet? I'm not sure if I know I have some, but I'm not sure if I have all of those yet. So if we could just.
I think between Melanie and myself, we can do that this week or early next week.
Okay. And then I saw school improvement plan somewhere. Was it in there somewhere? I thought I heard. Yeah. So I had a thought, and this is random, but would you consider for all of them to have a goal around the attendance? Because I remember hearing, we heard the improvement plan so late in the spring last year that I actually can still remember some of those. And so I was thinking, we talked about a lot about at the time, how important it is for kids to be in school and how we wanted to make that a priority to ensure that there was a sort of an understanding that this is important, like that's the first part. And I don't know what that goal looks like, but it was just something that we said, this is important to us. We want to make it a priority. And so then I thought, well, if we make, just like we're making behavior a goal across all the schools, maybe if we make a push for attendance and the importance of that, some sort of, I don't know what it looks like. It was just a random thought in my head. So for your consideration, I'll just put that there.
Pleased to say that every principal brought that up as they were developing school improvement plans. And it'll be a sub goal underneath their academic performance,
Okay.
because academic performance is certainly impacted by attendance. So that's the good news.
Yep. And we are tracking on the same page. All right, perfect. Board, any other thoughts, questions? Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Middleton.
Yep, thank you.
Next board reports, WIAA.
No huge update. Tonight in the consent agenda, we have the resolution form that'll be for us to be part of the WIA again this year. So that'll be coming up, but that's just about it.
All right. Legislative report.
Yeah, a couple of things. I met with WASDA recently and had a conversation with them about how we hit the ground running next session on picking up where we left off as far as conversations related to regionalization and special education funding and stuff like that. And they had some good ideas and some things that we can do, or I guess that I could do during this lull between sessions. So I'm certainly reaching out and trying to engage some of our representatives and seeing if they want to come over and, we can get together, those types of things. But I will say, and they said this, and I feel very positive about this, that, certainly our goal the last session was to have a modification to regionalization as well as special education, an increase to SPED funding. We certainly got some increase to it. It's hard for me because I'm a glass half empty type of guy. Did they give more money? Yes. Was that money close to the amount that I would have hoped for? No. But if the argument is related to did they give more money, the answer is yes. We're going into General Assembly. Obviously, WASDA will set its advocacy agenda as we move forward, but reading the early tea leaves, it appears that there's going to be a continued focus on special education funding. So they're going to continue to try to move that. Also, there does seem to be some movement at the federal level for additional funding, IDA funding. Not a lot of movement, but there's been bills proposed and stuff like that. So that's good. And I will say and I don't say this as a pat on the back at all, just to give you guys a read of the tea leaves. There's also been certainly all the work that we did last session, specifically in highlighting the negative impact of Granite Falls related to our sign regionalization certainly has hit ears. I was listening to actually a news presentation that Senator Wagner had actually in Marysville with the Marysville superintendent. He has a podcast and he talks with legislators and stuff. And they weren't even necessarily on the subject of regionalization. But I was very pleasantly pleased that not only did Senator Wagner work it into the discussion, he specifically said, districts like Granite Falls are negatively impacted by regionalization, and that's a goal for me next year. And I was fist pumping as I'm driving in the car. So to say specifically Granite Falls to another superintendent when they weren't even necessarily on that subject, I'm like, okay, they got it. They can at least see it. So that's really positive. So certainly trying to keep up the focus and to try to get some more movement on that next year. That's really all I've got.
Perfect. Community report.
Not a whole lot. Dr. Middleton spoke about all of the events that are coming up here in town and also in our community and Lake Stevens are having Aqua Fest this weekend and lots of fun things going on there. So
Never,
go support our neighbors.
Never been, I've lived here almost 20 years. I've never been. to Aqua
I've
Fest.
only been to the trade and I looked up all the events earlier today. And I was like, wow, there's so much going on. It looks like a lot of fun. So go check it out. Not a lot going on in the community right now. Everybody's kind of staying quiet, except parents are gearing up to get school supplies. So go check out the school supply thing over at Mountain Way. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Next, update on superintendent search. So 7A is the update on the search discussion, and then we'll have the timeline in the agenda. Thank
You
you.
want us over here or
Yes, sure.
does it matter? And Dr. Wilson.
Courtney,
Yeah.
Okay, this work?
Yeah, he'll be able to.
he's gonna move the camera over there.
There
he
There it goes.
There. All right, well, thanks for having us here tonight and finding some time on your agenda. We appreciate it. We've got a full agenda. You started early and looks like you're gonna go late, and then you've got some people with conflicts at home. So we'll try to move our piece of this along pretty quickly.
Thank
Our
you.
main objective is the agreement on the timeline. But got some other kind of talking points too. I'm Wayne Robertson. You've seen our resumes. This is Mark Venn. So you kind of know about our background. We're here from Northwest Leadership Associates. We appreciate you accepting us, our proposal to do your search. We're really looking forward to working with you and your community and your staff. Find you an outstanding superintendent. We received a draft timeline, which is a revisit of the timeline that came out of the proposal. Mark's going to speak to that in just a second here. You've already taken action on our contract with us, and we've got that at our office headquarters, which is just somebody's house. But
Mhm.
anyway, are there any questions about the contract or the responsibilities or your role? Any of that?
I don't know.
Oh,
2 minutes.
It's pretty straightforward.
No, I think I was just gonna say, within the timeline, is there anything that we should, especially because this is my first time going through something like this, any unforeseen risks that we should just keep an eye out for? Like, I think of, okay, we go through this whole process, we find somebody and then they back out last minute or something like that. Like, what sort of things within this timeline should, if any, are there risks that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Well, we work pretty hard to minimize those,
Okay.
of course. You can imagine, we don't want to see any surprises toward the
Right.
end. You do have a guarantee if you don't select a person that comes out of the pool.
Mhm.
We'll find an interim if you need us to, and we'll do a search again for free.
Okay.
If your person leaves within a year for cause,
Mhm.
we do the search again. So you've got a guarantee,
Okay.
but we've never had to go to that well. But with us, 30 searches, and with our company, 300 searches, so.
Okay.
But we'll be talking about those kinds of things, and we can foresee as we work with the candidates, when we bring you candidates toward the end, if they're applicants for other jobs, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
where things get kind of squishy, we'll be talking about that.
Okay.
We're just gonna jump right into this in the interest of time. Mark's done the work on the draft timeline, so he's gonna walk you through this a bit. This is probably the main focus for today.
Thanks. Well, thanks for having us here again, and if you look at my resume, I'm on the ESD board as well, so we're all board members here, so. And Senator Wagner is a very good friend of mine, we're in the same Rotary Club together, Carl, so I know him very well. So I want to go through this quickly, but I also wanted to make sure if you have questions, we can get those answered. So this is a draft. And our goal is that when you come back to meet on, says August 22nd, I think it's the 23rd, when your next meeting is, that you'll be able to say, we approve this and do that in a public nature. So we want to hit the ground running, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So one of the things that we think is really important is, as we go through this search, is that we're able to get the word out and have plenty of time for people to consider to come to Granite Falls. We just completed last spring the Lakewood search. We had 28 applicants for that job. That's probably right up there with the most we've ever had. So we are confident that you're going to have a good pool to choose from. Part of our work, of course, is to make your job easier. as a board. I know your concerns, but our job, Peter, is to make your job easier. And there's some key points here where you're gonna be involved, but really for the majority of the time, you're not involved. Wayne and I are doing the work. We're going out and recruiting, we're doing the calls, we're doing the vetting and all that. So the draft is that we would put a leadership profile, in other words, start getting community input around September 20th. And we do that in English and Spanish, and it's a survey. And we would start that survey around September 20th. And we have the template for that, and we'd be willing to have you take a look at it too. So that would go out to your community. Of course, we'd have to advertise that. You'd have to get the word out in your buildings and your principals and all that. And then right after that, the next week, we would post your position in September 27th with different websites. The WASDA, that you mentioned WASDA already, Carl, but WASA, which is the Association of School Administrators, AWSP, which is school principals. We'd also have it on our own Northwest Leadership website. And then we also are going to start putting it on the WALA website, which is the Washington Association of Latino Administrators. So there'll be a variety of opportunities to put that out. And it's not just in our state, it's nationally. People from all over the country will be able to see the position being posted. And basically what we'll tell them in the position, it's your school district, we're the search consultants, and when it closes. And salary will be competitive. What we'll say is it'll be competitive salary, and we'll talk more about that later. So after that's all put on there, we would come back the first week of October. Wayne and I would spend probably a day or a day and a half in your district meeting with focus groups, probably 15 to 20 different groups of people, community people. We'd meet with each one of you individually, and we'd meet with different staff members, different administrative groups, your classified employees, your parents, of course, and we put together a schedule where we spend a couple days. And basically, we ask them three things. What's good about the Granite Falls School District? What are the challenges a new superintendent's going to face? And the third thing, what are the attributes? What are you looking for in a new soup? We put that all together, and then we come back on October 10th and present to you in person. And we're going to do most of this in person. We don't want to do it Zoom if you're going to get beyond that. But we do a focus group report. And out of that, about a week later, we hope we can put together, and working with you, Tina, probably, and put that together and get the board's approval and be able to put a brochure out that we would distribute to about 8,500 people nationwide, internationally. And that's when the real rubber meets the road. So around the 18th of October, that would get going. And then we would come back, and there's kind of that time's the time we really hit the road and we start making phone calls, we contact people. We have a list of about 100 people that we will contact right out of the chute. And then on December 13th, before the break, we come in and give what we call a mid-search report. And it's very anonymous. We don't mention any names, but we can tell you how many people have applied, how many people we've sent applications to, what the breakdown is, how many have the doctorates, how many are male and female, how many are minorities, and that sort of thing. So we do that right before the winter break. So we come back after that, and then the job will actually close on January 12th, which is very early for, you'll be the first out of the gate for our whole state. So that's very early. But we want to give people a chance to consider it over the winter break. A lot of superintendents aren't sure if they're existing superintendents or assistant soups or principals. We need to give them time to consider that. January 12th is the deadline. We do, after the deadline's over, you get a chance to look at the applications. The applications come to us until then. You get a look at the applications. We screen each candidate, and then we come back on January 22nd, an executive session, and do a screening report to you. And out of that screening report, you would choose the preliminary or the semifinalist candidates, usually 5 or 6 that you would like to meet with. Then on January 27th, we got that set up for a Saturday, but it could be different. Depending on what you want to do, we could do this over a couple evenings if you want. But we do the preliminary interviews. And we have about 12 different questions that you ask as a board, and it can be done either in an open public meeting or it can be done in executive session. And what we're finding now is more boards are leaning towards doing an executive session or an executive session where they invite certain community members or people to come in and be part of that process to give feedback to the board. So we'll talk about that more later, but how that looks is going to be up to you. I mean, we're just making a recommendation here. If it's on one day, it would be a Saturday of your time. Where you come in about 8 in the morning and get done about 3 in the afternoon. You'd interview 5 or 6 people. Each interview is about 50 minutes. And so the candidates will come in one at a time and you meet with them. From that, you go into executive session and you decide who your finalists are. And then your finalists will come in the end of January, first part of February. Each of the 3, we recommend 3, would be able to spend a whole day in the district, meeting people, being visible, being around teachers, being around community members. And then at the end of the day, there would be an opportunity for a community meeting. You'd be able to attend. We usually have a dinner with the board, with the candidate, and usually their spouse, if they have a spouse. And then the last part of that day is you'll have a final interview with the candidate. That's an executive session. Basically, it's wide open as to what you want to ask and how that goes. So on February 2nd, which is a Friday, you would formally announce who you've chosen. You do it very similar to the way you just did with the roll call vote. And the night prior, when we meet with you, and we work with you, and we have strategies, you'll come to a consensus. You never vote on this until then. So it's all consensus building as a board. You come to a consensus on who your candidates are, who you want to move forward, and then who your final pick is. And then Valentine's Day, February 14th or around there, you would offer the contract and you'd have a new superintendent in February. That new superintendent wouldn't start till July. So you've got a long break-in period. A lot of time to work with Josh and Dr. Milton, and a lot of time to get ready and be prepared to be your new superintendent. So in a nutshell, that's a quick summary of what we recommend as a draft search calendar. And so any comments or questions about that? It does run pretty smooth. And your job is up front when we put the brochure together, and at the end when we do the interviews. We do the rest of the work.
Questions?
Does it make sense?
I've got a couple real quick, sorry.
Sure.
So specifically, the August 22nd meeting, is that's a face-to-face meeting with the board? That's an in-person
We
meeting?
wouldn't need to be, we wouldn't plan on being here. That just you would publicly say we approve the timeline as presented.
Okay. Oh, okay. So are we doing that tonight, or is that?
You can do it tonight. Yeah, you can do it tonight, Carl.
Well, I guess I'm not necessarily suggesting that we are. I guess I'm just saying we could, like, this is what we would look at, right? So we could theoretically say, yep, this looks great, and make a motion and approve it, and that would.
Ask Donnie to look it over, see if they were any big conflicts with things like parent teacher conferences and that. She thought it looked pretty good. So if you want to approve it, even just by consensus.
Yeah, you don't need it. It's just a consensus. The big one, what it is the closing date.
Yeah.
That's the day we need when we start to getting information out.
Yeah, because you start with the end and you work backwards from there. Yeah.
We've already had people reach out to us, and there's a grapevine out there, and we were at the Spokane conference this year. We mentioned that was after you guys had approved us, but there's people already reaching out to us. So basically, until we approve the timeline, we can't tell them what it's going to look like.
Got it. And then second question, and I'm not. Last time I went through this, obviously we used a different agency. So you guys, your reputation precedes you.
We don't hold that against you.
But I guess I just wanted to ask the question, and maybe your system does this well, and there's no modification here. But just looking at the timeline, you know, one of the things that we had in the RFP was to conduct a thorough search for appropriate applicants and ultimately produce for the board a pool of highly qualified prospects who are diverse in cultural background and meet the suggested criteria. And so just looking at your timeline, and you guys, I'm sure, have a well-oiled machine. Is there, I guess this is more of a challenge. I'm channeling my inner Ledoux right now. More of a challenge, like, is there an out of the box thinking? Is there something different that you guys have been like, man, it would have been great, because we are kind of feels like time is on our side, but I've also been in situations where that time starts slipping away, where because we're out, maybe we do something a little bit different, or we throw in something there to get more at that diverse cultural background, you know, bigger pool, more diverse, you know, that we can kind of plop in there. More of, is there something that you guys have? And if you don't, that's fine. Maybe, like I said, maybe your system automatically kind of pulls that. But I guess more of a challenge if there's something that you guys think
Well, you
that's
tell us
out there.
what you want. It's your, we're working for you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say you want us to focus on recruiting minority candidates, or if you want us to recruit, if you're interested, if it's, and we decide this as we put the brochure together, but
Right.
you decide what you're looking for. I mean, you tell us, and we're very flexible. I mean, we can go outside the box. We could, just compared to other boards we worked with Burlington last year. They were very highly intent on making sure there was a lot of diversity, Hispanic, Latina diversity. So it
We've
may
got
be,
some good partnerships with Wallace that was mentioned,
yeah.
and we've got some individuals that are well connected in multicultural settings and groups. And so we worked that pretty hard. We've been pretty successful in recent years. But one of the things we do with the focus groups is we meet individually with each board member. And we can really, we look forward to ideas or contacts or any suggestions.
So now, if you guys have names, but if you want to do something maybe different than what we've described here, this is kind of a template we've used and had a lot of success with. We certainly can do that, but it's not going to be anything that this isn't in concrete here, what we're saying, but it'll all come to be when we work together after the focus groups and the brochure. And then we get the brochure out, we can really focus on the people that you would like us to.
Yeah. A couple of just thoughts real quick, and then I know Director Ledoux has, you know, I helped write that. I used the term cultural very intentionally, because culture and race are not the same thing, right? You could have someone that is one race, but raised in a different culture. So my goal isn't necessarily to find a specific race. It's more of that diverse cultural background. So just to clarify that point. And to your point about, you know, you work for us, I appreciate that. I mean, I guess I don't necessarily know, you know, the rocks or how all of the machinations of that work, or if there's situations where you would normally maybe go out to someone else, but you wouldn't for a time. Like I said, it's just kind of more of a challenge. If you feel pretty confident that your system will give that, then I'm fine, you know, with the timeline. It was just more of throwing it out there, but.
Yeah, we had every search we did last year with Wayne, now we had over 20 applicants.
Yeah.
And we think you ought to.
Yeah,
The Lakewood pool was as strong as any pool we've had in recent years.
Yeah, I think the big thing, and in my day-to-day, in my day job, like the thing that executives hate to hear the most is the question of what keeps you up at night, because what keeps them up at night is what they're constantly working on, right? I think what we're looking for, and not to put words in your mouth, Carl, but what are the things that we don't know about that we're blind to? Right, that when you're working with other districts, are you saying, you know, what we're seeing, because I'm sure because you work with so many districts, we look at ourselves as very unique and different. Now, you may look at us and be like, you're not as unique and different. That's perfectly fine. Tell us that, and tell us then if we're not as unique and different as you think, then being as prescriptive as possible throughout this process to say, I strongly recommend you do this, because I've seen these pitfalls in the past, or because I've seen great success in this path. So tell me what should be keeping me up at night. Give me new fears so that I can then listen to you on how to resolve those fears. Because, Dr. Middleton is great. And we've loved working with him. If there's other pathways too, where it's like, hey, there's been this unique such and such in this district, love to hear those as well. So.
Sure, we'll be very transparent and open with you, and I mean, we'll answer the questions, but we also will say, we think you need to look at doing it this way.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Which is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
Once we all agree on what the process is, you'll hear us say time and time again, trust the process.
Yeah, you gotta trust the process. And we tell that to administrators too. It's trust the process. We tell it to parents, the process will get you a good pool of candidates. And our job is to make your job tough at the end. I mean, we want to get some really strong candidates for you to consider. But we're not gonna, if we know things about certain candidates in our vetting, that we know we're gonna be very upfront with you. And there's some things that you probably, hopefully, may not like to hear, but you will hear.
Yeah.
Because somebody may look good, really good on paper. And we vetted them out, so.
Yeah.
When I look at this and our diverse experience at the board, I think that taking this for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, probably is unnecessary. I think that we probably improve this timeline tonight and let these gentlemen get to work.
That would
It's
help.
kind of what I was thinking too,
Yeah.
not to jump on your bandwagon. And just as a side note, I'm gone. I've got a trip August 22nd, so I wouldn't be able to attend that meeting.
This is music to our.
Yeah.
So I just have a,
You're what we hope.
Yeah. I have a couple questions. I heard you say January 12th, and I heard you say, boy, you're the first one out, the earliest in the state.
Well, I'm
Is
not
that-
gonna guarantee
Is
that,
that,
but that's, you will be one of the earliest ones in the state.
are we too early? Is the 12th of January too early?
We don't think
Coming
so.
back from Christmas, and people are just barely settling in, trying to figure out what happened while they were away over Christmas. Is the 12th?
You're posting it early and you're finishing up early, so it's still open for a long window of opportunity. And I don't think that's.
Okay.
No, there were a number of districts last year that finished around that time
Mhm.
and had, successful searches, but
Okay.
we think you're gonna, boards are always concerned about, well, we're gonna get the leftovers.
Right.
And there are a lot of quality, good people out there. I see them as an ESD board member, but also we see them in this. We've had there's some really good, strong people out there and different cultures, different genders, and I mean, different experiences. If you're looking for the fit, you guys gotta find the right fit. And that's what you look for.
So looking at this timeline, I can tell you right now, I'm probably busy February 14th.
I like to hear that.
So
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Yes, so am I. I better be.
I was, yeah, I feel like none of us want to be here.
Isn't that a board meeting date?
Oh, is it?
Hi, guys.
Canceled. Make a motion.
Yeah.
We're gonna need a
Hold on.
You don't have to stick, it's mainly what we're after tonight is that you approve the closing date.
Yeah.
And then we can work back.
I think it's a good idea that we move forward.
So do we have to make that change now, or can we just pencil in the fact that this board is busy on February 14th?
Can I,
You can do it whenever you want.
Okay.
You can offer the contract at a public board meeting. So
Yeah.
before we move potentially to a motion, I guess I just want to also clarify, obviously, we wear a lot of hats in this district. How much effort is this going to take? Inevitably, really, it's probably going to be for Melanie. Like, do you have the support so that she's just not like, oh, hey, because I imagine this gets posted on the website and there's just a lot of things. Are you guys, I guess, do you feel comfortable with the timeline, Melanie? Do you feel comfortable with potentially what you have to do at different steps, that you're not gonna be like, we've got, some big thing I need to do there. I don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah, we talked early so that I could look at everything and
Okay.
yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, Dr. M, are you still there? We can't see you if you are.
Corey, can you turn that on?
I can't, the computer
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. We can't see you. So I guess it's great to be going through this process. There's a superintendent that you want to work collaboratively with to help you select potentially the next one. So anything that you see or any thoughts, I just want to ask the question because your opinion through this is 1 and 2.
No, I think one, you selected the right superintendent search firm because I think so highly of this firm and gentlemen who are there this evening. And 2, I know I shared earlier that at my last stop, I had something similar, and it was an early search. It was an early hire. And I had the benefit of working very closely with the outgoing superintendent that to me, it was a real gift. And it's a gift I want to give to the person that's coming on. I will be that superintendent that will make such a smooth transition for them. I'll be rooting for the next superintendent and we'll want to help this transition go so well.
Outstanding.
It's music to our ears too.
And we can see you again.
We can
The
see you
screen's
now.
Back up.
It doesn't always work that way, I have to tell you, and it's not easy. Josh can tell you, being the outgoing suit, but to reach out and help that new person be successful will be really important, but the person we really do, you hit the nail on the head. Melanie's gonna be our key person that we work with throughout this whole process. She's gonna be communicating to you, we are too, but she's gonna do yeoman's work, and we really appreciate that ahead of time, but it is a lot of extra work for you for a while. And being done January 12th may be good for Melanie too, to get it out of the way.
Wow, that's a good point. Well, I'll make a motion if you're opening up for motions.
Well, you don't need to really.
Oh, do we not? Okay.
Consensus.
We can go with, I think we've got consensus.
Go forth and conquer.
Consensus.
You have consensus with
Okay,
the,
so we have consensus.
with the
This is
addition,
how we'll work when we go through the searches, we build consensus and then we move forward.
with the exception of that February 14th, we're gonna asterisk that one. We gotta pencil in something else.
You heard it loud
In
and
that
clear.
board meeting.
Well, I'm not sure what we're doing on that, but I know what we're not doing. So we'll have to talk more about what happens on February 14th, but we probably won't be offering and approving a contract that night. But we're dang close.
Whatever date.
Whatever board meeting you have after.
Yeah,
Well, we could probably even make a special meeting if we
Yeah,
had to.
we can do a special
You
meeting.
can sign a letter. Usually it's at a board meeting and then you invite the candidate to come in with their family and you kind of make it a celebration.
Yeah.
Make it a celebration and do it that way. Up until then, there's a letter of intent that's signed by you, Tina, and also the person you choose. And it's fairly binding, may not be, somebody took it to court, but we've done our vetting, they're gonna want to be.
Right. Yep.
Back out to us.
So we'll find the date for a special meeting or whether we reschedule. I'm not sure what we do, but I feel like we'll have to have a conversation with our families if we.
Probably want to do it on a regular board.
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, you want to do it right.
An action item.
Yeah.
That's an action. So we want to move forward here.
Yep.
We don't want to.
How are we doing on time?
Okay, Melanie, on time.
Yeah, we are, well, I think you have consensus. Yeah,
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the brochure, Mark mentioned that it's gonna go out October 18th. It's an electronic document. We email it to 3,500 plus people that are on a distribution list. We also post it on your website, on our company website. And we'll work with Melanie and others on the content. The most important part of it are the qualifications and characteristics, because that's what the applicants write to in their written submittal. So we want to make sure we've got your consensus on that. And so we get the written submittal that you want to have speaking to the items that you think are important. Then it also tells them where to send their application. That sort of thing. There's time on that, so we'll get the focus groups feed into that. What everybody tells us, we share that with you, and then we put together the brochure.
Yeah, I talked about staff and community input, and what that looks like. We'll work with Melanie and you, Tina, and see which groups. I mean, some districts do faith-based groups too. We don't recommend it. We had it happen once, but some districts have done political parties. I don't recommend that at all. If we had, we'll tell you stories when we get into executive session. So anyhow, we'll decide how many, who they are, what the groups are, and really a big important part of that is with you guys, asking those questions to you guys. So be thinking about that a little bit. The interview format for the candidates you choose to move forward, I mentioned before, there's a couple options. You can do number one, an open public meeting. Number two, you can do those in executive session. Number two, you can do them all one day on a Saturday, or you can take that week and do them a couple, maybe on a Wednesday or Thursday. It's up to you. We'll talk more about that later, but.
Can I just say one thing? And you can recommend whatever you want, but correct me if I'm wrong, because this did come up on the last one. Interviewing, especially at that initial level in the executive session, is better because there might be a candidate who's like, I don't want my board to know I'm looking.
Exactly right.
Right, and so if we do it open, then everyone knows if they don't get it, that could be negative for them, so.
Well, they probably want their board to know that they're interviewing, but that would be a concern, but they don't want their whole community to know.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And that's a good point because you are finishing, closing early on your application. There probably are quite a few superintendents, chief assistants, superintendents, and principals that don't want their name out there. And if you do an executive session, it actually runs pretty smooth either way, but an executive session being as early as maybe something you want to strongly
it's really
consider.
easier on the candidate.
Yeah,
And the candidate doesn't have 50 people at their back watching everything. And you'll, if you do an open public, we recommend that you have the public provide written input for you that you look at. So something to think about. Final interview, I mentioned before that you do is an executive session. And basically the format for the preliminary is you have a set of questions you ask each board member has the same question. You ask each candidate the same questions. So it's all the same thing. In the final interview, you can ask what you want. You may say, well, I noticed this about you. What do you think about this? In Granite Falls, we do things this way. How do you respond to that? So, and it really, except for religious issues and issues on where they stand for it and that, you've got to kind of make that off limits, but pretty much open, it's an open conversation. And basically, it's a good way for the board to really, can I really work with this person? I mean, you got to, and hopefully there's two or three you can say, yeah, I could. Now it becomes the part where Wayne and I work with build consensus. So, okay.
When we meet with you individually or sometime at some point in the process, we'll want to know what each of you thinks about things like residency. Does this person need to live in the district? Could they live in a neighboring district? That sort of thing. We want to make sure everybody's on the same page with that. Education level, doctorate. Would you be open to a person who wasn't an educator, with a military background or higher education background? And we want to know what your expectations are in terms of their leadership experience. You're the size district where this is a pretty hands-on district, but you're also big enough where you've got a team and you've got some resources. So you're looking for an executive. So there's a lot to talk about that way. We want to make sure that we know what you're looking for if we talk to candidates, because they'll say to us, what are they looking for? That kind of thing. We talked a little bit about advertising, where the job's going to get posted. Take care of that. That's pretty straightforward. Probably that will, WASA usually turns over their career connections page second week of September. They leave the current ones that have been filled up till about then. So we're right about when we'll probably be the first district to contact them and say, hey, we got a job to post. Let's get going. Wants to sing.
So when we get calls from candidates, they ask us two things right away. Number one is, and they should ask this, what's the board like? Because as Dr. Middleton can tell you, you spend an inordinate amount of time with the board. Now, if you're married, you all of a sudden you have 6 wives rather than just one. So it's very similar. You spend a lot of time. So they ask what the board's like. But number two, they ask what the compensation is. And you're in Snohomish County, And I know what the salaries are. I don't need to tell you, I'm on the ESD board. We look at your salaries that you pay, what people pay. You want to be competitive. So it's kind of time to start thinking a little bit about what a competitive salary would look like for Granite Falls. You know what Lakewood offered. We can do some salary comparisons if you'd like. I don't know if you want to compare yourself to Edmonds or Mapleton or Everett or Marysville or like.
If you gave me their regionalization, maybe.
Well, if you did, you're right. You're right. So it's up to you, but we recommend it. We want to tell them it's going to be competitive, and we would say probably by the mid-search right around there is you kind of need to give us a ballpark figure because people are really consider that question. Because a lot of time, we'll talk about this later, they've got to make a decision whether they can afford to move. And they're going to be doing the research on your district and you know, what are the housing prices like, what's the cost of living like here. So you have to be competitive if you want it as good a pool as you're going to get.
We like to have that contract finalized, not for action, but done in your minds. So that when we invite candidates in for the semifinalist interview, we can show them as Mark's walking out with them and say, okay, good job on your interview. What do you think? We'll talk about it a little bit and we'll show them the contract and we'll talk them through the main bones of it. And the idea is if they're invited back for a finalist interview, that contract, particularly the total compensation aspect of it, is good to go. So that you don't have any protracted negotiations. At the end of the process, we don't have a candidate getting away from us after you've fallen in love with them. So that's kind of the timeline in terms of your work with, probably with Dr. Middleton and with your attorney. So
yeah, make sure you have your attorney look at your contract.
it's a good time to tune up the contract.
Yeah. And there may be some things that additions to the base salary that, you know, maybe that you want to change or something like that, or maybe you want to keep in there, but we're looking at the base salary, but we also want to be able to make sure the candidate, what's the total compensation they'll receive. Travel moving expenses, if you expect your superintendent to live within the boundaries of the district, which a lot of districts, particularly the size of Granite Falls, do, because it's so important to work with the community and be involved and go to the different events that you have. You have to consider that they're going to be having to make a tough decision to move. It's usually customary that we recommend that the board and provide a one-time around $10,000 to help them move, which we know would not cover it, but it's a gesture to basically show your appreciation for them coming into your district. And it's a one-time thing. You don't have to put it in your contract or anything like that. Just to kind of get you thinking about that. Travel, you know, when the interview in the preliminary interview and the semifinalists, the travel is on their dime. Say you have somebody from Idaho or Montana coming in. If they come in for the preliminary interview, it's on their dime. And then once they have to find a place to stay, they have to travel. But if you want them back, basically it's on your dime. So if they're going to be a finalist, then you would pay for them to fly here or drive here and accommodations for them. Just a heads up. And if they're from Snohomish County, from King or Skagit, it wouldn't matter. It would with that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we want to make sure that when you make the pick, that you know that we've done our due diligence. So when you pick your 3 finalists, we do third-party background checks on each of the candidates. And they check their finances, they check their Facebook presence, they check their resume, and they check hopefully there isn't criminal record. So if those 4 areas, we hired a third-party firm out of Spokane that does that. So you can be assured when you go into those and start interviewing those 3 finalists that they pass the background checks. So that covers you, covers us too, right? And make sure that. So recruiting?
Yeah, basically, obviously, that's our job. We recruit, but if there's somebody that you want us to reach out to, let us know. And we'll follow up with that. We also want to make sure that we're handling any potential inside candidates appropriately. We don't want them to have an advantage, but we also don't want them to be at a disadvantage or not be respected. So we want to make sure that we're all communicating about that. We've had to do some counseling with inside candidates before, and so we're got some experience with that. We'll take care of anything you want us to do with the media, with press releases. We'll help with that. If you've got somebody that's doing that, we'll stay out of their way, or we'll help them. We'll be there if there's a need for that. Typically, as you start introducing finalists to the community, the newspaper wants to know who they are, and they want to know a little bit about them. We get headshots of the semifinalists when they come through, and we'll have some bio statements that you can put on your website once their names are made public, that kind of thing. So
The Everett paper has a tendency to focus more on the bigger districts, as you know. I read the Everett Herald, so
it's not always a disadvantage.
it's okay, it can be okay, but you know, until this last week, the new superintendent at Lakewood hadn't even been mentioned in the paper until this week. And so it's good news, bad news sort of thing, but we will help you with that for sure.
Can you just give me just 1 second? Are you, hold on. Are you okay?
You gotta go, Bill.
Almost. I think you guys are gonna hit.
Okay,
30 seconds.
okay.
The last
I have
thing
a
is
question.
your time is kind of front loaded on the focus groups. You'll be a little bit involved in that. Then you've got a couple of board meetings, reports, and then it's kind of backloaded on 2 rounds of interviews. So we'll probably go back and forth with you, keeping you informed, Melanie, and then it's something that you'll disseminate information out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Questions or audios?
So I did have a question, when you mentioned the background checks, you mentioned specifically a Facebook presence, but are you all social media presence?
Yeah,
Okay.
not just Facebook.
I just wanted to make sure.
Twitter,
Social media,
Yeah.
Google,
That's.
and we go off list from our references pretty fast.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we're usually calling some people we know. Because we've been around.
Yeah, social media presence is
Yeah,
a huge
that's
deal
what I
these
should-
days,
yeah.
and I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure we clarified it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So, based on your consensus, we're gonna move forward.
Yep.
And the next time we see you will be either October 3rd or 4th, when we meet individually with you. And then we'll meet with the focus groups, and then we come back on October 10th with the focus group report. That's open public information, so we'll give that to you, and if you want to post that, and do that. We really need to work closely with your website person. Is this the website?
That's me.
Coach, we wear a lot of hats.
But you need to get that survey up and going and get that posted, and get that ready to go here in September. So you got enough time after school starts to do that. So what's your first day of school?
The sixth. Got
After-
kind of a rolling
after
start, so
Labor
6th
Day.
and 7th, yeah.
Okay, so that, you've got enough time to get rolling. By the way, I really like the facilities here. That one of the things I did as a suit was to put in an artificial turf and a new track, and it was a huge positive for the community. This was in Seawolf. Anyhow, that looks great, and I remember coming up here and seeing games when I was high school principal, and the field was challenging to say the least. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's appreciated.
Appreciate it.
Very much.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime, those questions.
Yeah. You have my card.
I have both your numbers and yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff. Sure, and good.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll see you.
Before you start the next one, let's make a motion to excuse Bill.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you
very much.
too.
Yeah, I'm ready to move.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion that we excuse Director Dane as he let us know he had to go at 7:30.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Before we move on. Oh.
You can have.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Will
you.
do.
Appreciate that. All right, next is items from the floor. I don't see that we have any, so. Moving on to 9A, unfinished business, reading to amend policy 3230, searches of students and student privacy. Discussion.
No. Make a motion that we approve the second reading to policy 3230, searches of students and student privacy.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, second reading to adopt policy 4010, school, family and community partnership policy. Discussion.
I saw the change from staff development to professional learning.
Yeah, that was the.
I really like this. I guess just ask the question. I know you worked with your parent group
Mhm.
on this. Other than that, I think it aligned perfectly with the model policy, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I started with that and then I did some research on some districts actually all across the country and kind of picked and grabbed and kind of found the themes and wrote it to reflect us.
And I had a thought as I was making my notes for tonight's meeting. There are several things that it sort of calls out that we are going to be doing as a district. And it sort of calls on us to do that. And my thought was to put a placeholder on our agenda for those items. This is a half-baked idea, so I'm interested in your input. But to somehow put a space in our agenda such that if there is, and I highlighted it for my notes, but now my copy here isn't the same highlighted copy. So it talked about us providing information about how to support learning at home, effective study habits. It talked about us working with training and recognition of family and community volunteers. There were several things there. My thought was maybe that we have a space in our agenda, not something that we necessarily have discussion about, but that we could publish links or information from each of the schools and collect it such that when our notes are published, our meeting notes are published, that information would all be one place communicated out. I don't know. It was a thought. I don't know if it's the best way to approach it, but it's a thought because we're giving ourselves a policy and I want to ensure that we're holding up our end of our own policy, right?
So can I say something that?
Yes, please do.
That maybe, so to me, that's the how, right? And I noticed there wasn't a procedure attached to this, and I'm not saying, Dr. M, that there should be, but I guess that I'm interested to see now that we approve this, the how part, which is your procedure, right? So how are we going to meet the board policy on welcoming atmosphere? How are we going to meet it on communication? How are we going to make it on parent support? And it's not our role to approve procedures, right? So, but I would like to see that. So, and I'm sure that's something that Dr. M, once we approve this, then you're going to start working on the how part of it, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So
Yeah, some way to, and we can just leave that to the procedure because it hasn't been, like I said, it's a half-baked idea. I just don't want us to approve it today and then lose track of so many things it's committing us to. So however that looks or whatever that turns out to be, I'm interested to see that. But otherwise, of course, I support the policy. So any other discussion or can we make a motion?
I just one other, if it's okay. I've heard a lot of conversation about, like parent bill of rights, right? Our legislature was trying to get a parent bill of rights and stuff like that. I kind of see this as like a parent bill of rights, really, for granted that, we recognize, honor, and want to encourage the absolute integral role that a parent plays in their child's education. Mm-hmm. And I don't want this just to be another policy that we approve and just kind of gets thrown in. Like, is there any, and I'm looking to you, Dr. M and Melanie, like do you think that we should advertise this or talk about this or a
Can I
newsletter
answer
or something? Please, yeah. go
Okay,
ahead.
so we are putting together with the Family Engagement Board, family notebooks that will go home on open house first day or the orientation day. And this is going to be included in that, along with the letter from the Family Engagement Board about why parent involvement and a partnership is important to not only the district, but our families as well. So this will be included in that.
Awesome. And then like on like Facebook and stuff too.
Sure.
I'm just interested to,
Yeah.
maybe I want to break out some popcorn and be interested to see the feedback
Yeah.
from the local boards and when,
Yeah.
if this was, hey, we've approved this.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That answers that question then. That's all I got.
So, okay, yes, it's okay. So I'll make a motion that we accept the second reading to adopt policy 4010, school, family and community partnership.
I will, well, actually, no, I'm going to rescind my second because I would love for Director Kincaid to do that.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, second reading to adopt policy 3112, social emotional climate. Discussion.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the second reading to adopt policy 3112, social emotional climate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And 9D, second reading to adopt policy 3143, notification and dissemination of information about student offenses and notification of threats of violence or harm. Discussion.
The only thing with this is just because since it has such strong language in it, it always evokes thoughts of questions. But I think at the end of the day, right, it's that intersection of law enforcement and school.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay.
I make a motion that we accept the second reading to adopt policy 3143, notification and dissemination of information about student offenses and notification of threats of violence or harm.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
10, new business, 10A, approval of the 23-24 school year budget, resolution 22-23-15. Discussion.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. So, I still have concerns that we haven't necessarily wrapped our arms around kind of the things that's been eating our lunch financially. However, based upon what I'm hoping is going to be approval of the new minimum fund policy that's going to happen later in our agenda, I'm comfortable with this because I think that policy really empowers us to, again, put up those guardrails and to know when the car is going to veer out of its lane. So, if those old challenges come back to haunt us, based upon that policy, we'll be notified and, we can make some real big decisions as needed there. So I'm comfortable approving this. This does increase our fund balance and it is, I think overall a good budget.
I just had a thought. Between the time of Marshall's presentation and now, there was a couple of slides where Dr. Middleton and Marshall called out the risks to the projected plan. And I know that there's some things in the upcoming first reading policy that would put that in place, but I guess I'd like to see you offered to put whatever information in the business reports. And I think a tracking of those risks as we go throughout the year, like whatever there might be as whatever we're doing to mitigate that or remediate those risks as we go along, because it has to be more than a slide at the beginning of the year. Like it has to be something that we keep in our mind. So maybe that slide goes in there. And if there's something that we're doing to mitigate or remediate those risks that you've identified in July, that we're still sort of tracking those by October. We haven't forgotten that we projected that this could be a thing, right? And what are we going to do? And that would be in partnership with the policy or side by side. But anyway, the policy will say what it says, but if you're offering to put it in there, then I accept your offer, is what I'm saying. Any other discussion?
I feel like I address, we'll talk about it a little bit, but I think I bite that apple in my policy, but we'll talk about that in a
Okay.
second.
All right,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 23-24 school budget resolution 22-23-50.
A second.
all in favor?
Aye.
First reading to amend policy 6022 minimum fund balance requirements.
Yeah.
Discussion.
I'll jump in here if you don't mind. Sure.
Mhm.
So I've talked about this a couple of times. I won't read this all to you guys, but essentially the goal here is that ending next year that we have and maintain a 7% minimum fund balance. And then by the end of the 24-25 have a 10%. The point I was making earlier about us biting the apple, I put in language there very deliberately that during Marshall's presentation, that if there's ever something that comes up that goes, like you're talking about these risks where he goes, oh, I don't know, we're slipping, that at that same meeting, so that we aren't lagging in our movement, that a recovery plan is also discussed at that meeting. And then, if Marshall goes, hey, we are, here's our minimum fund balance requirement. Here's what we've done to try to mitigate it. It's not going to happen. We're going to be at a 6%. Then that it's clear that if we agree to a 6%, that only comes from an official motion and a vote of the board, rather than, just kind of like a kind of situation. And that doesn't mean that I don't want, there are, I'm sure, very many reasons why we may choose to do that, and that's certainly fine, but that just, at least for me as a leader of the district, allows me to know clearly, yep, we all agree that that's what we're going to do, and we're moving forward. So I would certainly love, Marshall, to hear yours. I know I got this, your thoughts, if any concerns. I know you and I have talked multiple times about this. Dr. Middleton, I know we've talked. I'd love to hear if you have any concerns. This is a first reading. So I also want to make clear, this isn't Carl digging my heels in the ground. If there's something we need to change or something like that, I'm very open to discussion on this. Go ahead.
Quick question, do we need to define at the end of the 23-24 school year, and at the end of the 24-25 school year, that our year-end fund balance be this?
Do we need to define what those dates are?
I think that the way it reads to me is it almost can be interpreted that beginning with the 23-24 school year, we need to have a minimum fund balance of 7%, not at the end of the 23-24 school year.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so maybe instead of ending, beginning, say ending with the 23-24
I think so.
year. Okay.
I think that would make it.
I'm completely fine with that. Melanie, how do you want to track changes in this? Do you want me to, didn't write it.
can do it.
Okay. So changing the 7% ending instead of beginning with the 23-24.
Can we remove this A? Because it says maintaining a sufficient fund balances, should it be just sufficient fund? Or would it be a sufficient fund balance? That S on the end of balances throw me off, huh?
It is. It could be singular. I mean, I guess, I don't know, Marsh, what do you think? I mean, there are multiple.
I just think we do a, it's much easier for us to manage the other funds because there's such restricted rules around them that I think it's important to, debt services, for instance, we have to maintain. That's one we have to manage the most probably, because we have to request levy dollars that are sufficient to pay our outstanding bond obligations for that year. So I do think calling out multiple funds is probably appropriate.
Okay.
So maybe instead of A,
Just scratch off that
scratch
A.
off the A.
Maintaining top
It's
line,
the very first line.
maintaining sufficient fund balances, delete the A.
Oh, good. I like it.
One quick question. So this is a big hypothetical. I actually just recently heard the Warren Buffett I don't know when this video was, but he said you could erase all of the US debt very easily. And it was signing a policy into law that said if the US debt exceeds 5% of its GDP, no sitting senator or representative can be reelected. They'll get right on working together to reduce that. So that I bring that up because there's, obviously that's not occurring, but there's a clear action consequence thing behind that. When I see something of a recovery plan will be provided at the same time, fiscal, great. And even if we vote and say, then let's go to your hypothetical of, it looks like we're going to hit 6% this year. Let's say we don't vote that's okay. Now what? Doesn't stop us from going to 6%. Doesn't stop us from going to 3%. So what are the actual what? Because I sit up here and I'm saying, okay, yes, we put this in here, and it's making it known what we want, but it doesn't have a lot of staying power.
I thought you raised an interesting question because I contemplated. So I'll tell you right off, I looked at a bunch of different districts. They all have fund balance requirement policies. I kind of made a hybrid of them. And I thought about putting, and I don't know if you're saying this, but I thought about putting teeth in it, right? Like some sort of, and if you don't, is that what you're saying? Or some sort of
not like if you don't, I think of a reserves the right.
Yeah. And so quite honestly, so then I pulled up our superintendent contract, and in there it says, superintendent will enact all policies enacted by the board and understands that could be a reason that they are hired, that their contract is terminated for cause or something like that. And so there is teeth, I guess, theoretically, if in the superintendent contract, whether we collectively feel like that's enough, I don't know. But to your point, I guess, at least my hope is that if Marshall came and said, hey, we're going to be at 6%, the board voted no, well, then Marshall knows, all right, well, I got to figure this out. I got to figure that 1% somewhere, and superintendent knows, hey, man, I could lose I could potentially lose my job for this. You got to figure it out. But you bring up an interesting conversation. I'm glad we're having that.
Yeah. And I'm not thinking of right. These are worst case scenarios. These are tools in the tool bag to have if necessary, but to the point, as Tina was so passionately putting last week, action has to be taken. And if something's not working, up even through cabinet level or something, do we at least have, because as of right now, it feels like, and yes, there might be the superintendent thing, but that's not, that's even worse than we're now privy to it a month. And eventually, what are we going to hire a superintendent every time that we're not, at 7%? We need an action to change it to 7%. And so just something to think about. I don't know what that would look like. Like I said, I'm thinking more of a reserves the right clause or something if we decide to launch the nuclear codes, effectively. But I would hope to never use that, but just that's something that's there.
I think it's a valid option. I don't know what it looks like, but before this meeting, maybe do we have?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm very open. This isn't me. I always hear people do this at work. I'm very open if you want to create something. Right. I remember I say that but I mean that with all of the positivity, hopefully you're receiving. It's literally, I'm very willing to look at that.
Yeah. Something aside, it could be, not a lawyer, but reserves the right to freeze funds beyond, payroll for the subsequent 30 days until, something, I don't know, something along those lines. I don't know. We can maybe check with,
I think whatever language we did with that, you'd have to shoot through Buzz.
Yeah.
Just make sure that we are doing some untoward.
All right. So I like it. I think we all like it. We don't know what it looks like, but I think it's a fair and valid point, and certainly something that's caught us in the past, and so worth looking at for the future.
Yeah.
Do
So
we
that means
volunteer Peter to write that for us?
So we've got-
I could give it a shot, and I'll be very clear again, like, the hope and intent is that this never has to be used. I just feel like,
Yeah.
I just don't want another policy where we're like, please do what it says.
Yeah,
Your point is well taken.
thank you.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll, before the second reading, we'll look at putting something in there
Okay.
with the reserves the right
Okay.
ish phrase.
Yeah.
But if you could get that to me sooner rather than later, because anything like that, of course, would have to go through the
Right.
legal
Yep.
review. Right, are we ready to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the first reading to amend policy 62 minimum fund balance requirements with the modifications that Melanie's been tracking.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, first reading to amend policy 4200, parent access and safe and orderly learning environment. Discussion.
Is this a WASDA one or did you do this one too?
I did not do this one. This is a LASDA one. It looks like it's right off of the federal
Is
policy.
the WASDA model policy.
So I sent you a question, Dr. Middleton, and let's see. And I sent a question to Dr. Middleton and I'm just not sure, so I think I gave you maybe the wrong letters. Anyway, so in the procedure, I'm just curious, based on Carly's policy that we just looked at in like 10 minutes ago. The procedure says if the visitor wants to observe the classroom, the time is arranged with the principal or designee. And then D says if the purpose is to observe the learning, the visitor may be asked to confer with the teacher before or after. So does the visitor, like, what do they do? Do they contact the principal to arrange a visit, or do they contact the teacher to arrange the visit? Because it sounds like the principal has to confer with the teacher, but then it sounds like, well, the person contacts the teacher. So what are we asking a parent to do? Contact the principal to visit a teacher, or contact the teacher?
I'm not sure what the rationale with WASDA is, and I can certainly find out, but I'm speculating that it just depends on what the parent initiative in contacting the school is. If it's, hey, I just want to come in and watch, okay, you're gonna, probably talk with well, you're right. I mean, in both cases, I would think they would be talking to the teacher, but there might be times when I can't talk to the teacher. I'm going to talk to the principal. I can do a little research on it.
Okay, because it says if the visitor wishes to observe the classroom, that's C. And it says if the visitor wants to observe the classroom, then they have to arrange with the principal. But then it says if the purpose is classroom visitation,
Right.
then they talk to the teacher before or after. So I just wondered if we could, this is not something we vote on. This is just a procedural thing that I read it. And I'm like, so based on our commitment to clear communication of expectations for parents, what do we want them to do here between C and D? Whatever that is, I will defer to you to figure out what WASDA is intending with this. But other than that, I have no concerns about the policy itself. Any other?
So just, I guess I'm just dropping this in the chat. So I didn't do this before. I appreciate the question. I actually looked up the RCAW that this policy is referencing that makes us, there's basically directs us to create a policy. And it's RC, well, you get it's on there. And basically all that RCW says is that we have to have a policy to assure parents access to their classroom and or school sponsored activities for the purposes of observing class procedure, teaching materials, and class conduct. The same law makes clear, however, that such observations shall not disrupt the classroom procedure or learning activity. This means the district need a policy, but there might be some circumstances where families cannot observe. So I guess I'm just throwing that out there that I don't know. It feels a little like prickly that we have one policy like, we love parents. Parents are the best. Come in. And we have another like, but if you're disrupting the class, we're going to like, so like, would we be meeting the intent if we just drop something in the policy that we just approved that said, hey, and if you disrupt class, you know, obviously you understand that you can't disrupt the learning environment or something along those lines and meet the intent of RCW, whatever. And I know that Dr. M and everyone, that's probably not a question that we can answer here. That's why I said I'm just kind of dropping it into the chat. If that's, you know, maybe something we potentially could do and then maybe delay this to, you know, if we need to get legal advice or something like that. Or, you know, but if the board doesn't feel like there's no consensus there, you know, I guess we do what we got to do.
I don't have an issue with the policy. There are times when there could be, you know, tension, and I demand to be in there right now. You know what? You're not in the right space to be doing that. And we owe it to our teacher to, you know who's coming in. So I don't see the conflict.
Okay.
So I think I would feel okay accepting the first reading, and then before we do the second reading, we find out kind of what WASDA was intending with their model procedure between the words
Yeah,
in C and D, like,
I think a lot depends on the procedure that goes with this. Just to be fully transparent, I was invited to a school by several teachers to come observe their classrooms. And when I showed up there, the principals hauled me into the office and drilled me on why I was there. So, and I wasn't there to do anything but sit and observe their classrooms. So I think the procedure is, you know, making sure everybody's on the same page as far as the procedure goes, parents and the school.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, you know, do they contact the principal? Do they contact the teacher? Just making sure we have that outlined in the procedure is the important part.
and I did see in there when reading that the principal obviously can deny access when it's state testing, et cetera.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I think that's as expected as it should be, et cetera. So I would feel okay accepting the first reading with the understanding that before it comes back for the second reading, we get a little more clarification on the intent. Your thoughts? Is that cool?
Agree.
Yeah, I can live with that.
All right. Then I guess I'll make a motion that we accept the first reading to amend policy 4200, parent access and safe and orderly learning environment.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. First reading to amend policy 2110, transitional bilingual instruction. Discussion.
Nope, I see now, and I apologize for not seeing it before. This is it's a recommended policy, so here's what it is.
I make a motion that we accept the first reading to amend policy 2110, transitional bilingual instruction.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. First reading to amend policy 3116, students in foster care. Discussion.
Same points before, last recommended policy, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the first read and then policy 3116, students in foster care.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You first reading to adopt new policy 6600, transportation. Discussion.
See, also, this is a Mazda policy. I read through it. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me. I don't know if anyone else did.
I had a question of clarification, which I sent to Marshall and honestly did not give him enough time ahead of time. I gave him honestly 2 minutes because it was the time right before the public hearing. I noticed that the transportation, it talks about the district provides transportation to and from school for a student whose residence is beyond 1 mile radius. But then everything else talks about that a student can walk up to 1 mile, right? So it seems to me that we're doing 1 mile as the crow flies from the school, but the bus stop is 1 mile walking distance. You don't walk like as the crow flies. So I think it's a little bit weird, but it sounds like this is how the state calculates how we get funded for buses, and our district has chosen to establish, and I'd like to just recognize that though this is the policy recommended by WASDA, our district does pick up stops. And, along the way that are not reimbursed because it's the right thing to do. So I appreciate transportation working that in and just recognizing that though the funding is one way, we're doing the right thing. And I appreciate that. We're doing our best to do the right thing. It's not perfect. But any other discussion?
I'm just interested in that part that you mentioned that says that students may be required to walk up to 1 mile from their home to their bus stop.
Mhm.
And as I've had conversations with Marshall and everybody else, the bus won't go down my road. So if my children were to walk from my house, it would be 1.5 miles.
Mhm.
So I find that interesting.
Is yours a private road? I bet it's like mine.
Is it a private? No.
Yours is a public road.
Yeah,
So,
it's
is there a
on.
way- I'm sorry, is there no way to turn around on your road? Is that what road do you live on?
I live on Waymill. You wrote down it. We have a school bus turnaround. They just won't come down our road because it takes too long. That's what I've been told.
That just.
Well, let's talk about this policy.
Yeah.
We don't have a policy yet. This is a new policy, so
Yeah. I just found that interesting. Like, oh,
Anyway.
okay. Anyway. Just thoughts of my brain.
Yeah, my kids were, well, I mean, we drive, everybody in the neighborhood would drive down, but I mean, our bus stop during the 21-22 season was down on Burn Road.
Oh, that's part.
Yeah, so I mean, from everybody in the neighborhood, it was up to 1 mile, maybe even a little bit more or something.
which is why we need a policy.
Yeah.
We should,
Did you see this, Peter? Carl just printed this out. It says the parent or guardian of a student whose assigned bus stop is beyond the maximum walking distance may receive reimbursement for private transportation.
Looks like you're due some money.
Feels like.
we don't have a policy. We don't have a policy yet. That's the policy.
Is it ever?
Tracking those miles, but,
Interesting.
okay.
Okay.
I'd like to, I'll propose that we accept the first reading to adopt new policy 6600, transportation.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Consent agenda, including the personnel report, and there were some additions to the consent agenda.
Rose. Didn't see that. Where
Save it.
I don't see the additions.
I didn't save it. I just.
Oh. I saw the,
I saw it says
Under new agenda item.
new agenda item.
Oh,
Is it on there?
Yeah.
I just didn't save that.
oh, it says new agenda
Thank you.
item. Yeah. So that's the additions. Yep, there it is. I was like, I know I saw it. I didn't pay attention to what it is, but all right. Any discussion? All right, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda with the additions.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. It is 8:07 and we